This reading can't be accurate, Senior Technician Malore said, mandibles clicking in agitation as she recalibrated the monitoring station's sensors for the third time. No organic signature could remain coherent in the void for this long. Junior. Technician Vexler hunched over his terminal, triple appendaged hands trembling slightly. The pulsing red dot on his screen, indicating the human life sign, hadn't disappeared despite multiple system diagnostics. 17 hours now, Senior. The signal's actually strengthening. Across the monitoring chamber, other technicians exchanged nervous glances with their multiple eye stalks. The galactic void was death incarnate, a region where reality itself grew thin, where radiation, temporal anomalies, and dimensional instabilities made survival impossible for any known species. The Confederation's most advanced probes couldn't last more than minutes there before disintegrating. Yet here was evidence of a human, a species barely granted provisional Confederation status, somehow persisting. Alert the Central Authority, Malore finally ordered. Mark it equipment malfunction priority 3. Vexler hesitated, but protocol states, I know protocol. Malore snapped, her chromatophores flashing warning colors. But do you understand what happens if this reading is accurate? Everything we know about biological limitations would be wrong. The chamber doors parted with a pneumatic hiss. High Theorist Zintor glided in, his ceremonial robes of office shimmering with embedded quantum calculations, mathematical proofs of his scientific authority. 7 bioluminescent tendrils extended from his cranial ridge, the mark of his species' highest evolutionary achievement. Explain, he commanded, voice resonating at precisely the frequency to command maximum attention from all species present. Malore prostrated herself. System error, High Theorist. We're resolving it now. Zintor's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary set tracked the monitoring screen. You've run 3 diagnostic sequences already. Show me the anomaly. When the data transferred to his personal quantum tablet, Zintor's bioluminescence flickered, the equivalent of a gasp in his species. For 327 cycles, he had served as the Confederation's leading authority on xenobiology. His 7-volume dissertation, Absolutes in Cosmic Biological Limitations, had defined the very hierarchy that structured interstellar society. And now, floating on his screen, was data that threatened to unravel it all. Quarantine this information, he ordered. Full-spectrum communications blackout. But High Theorist, Vexler ventured, shouldn't the first contact division be? There will be no contact, Zintor interrupted, calculations already forming in his mind. If humans could survive the void, if they possessed biological adaptability beyond what the Confederation had classified, the power balance that had kept his species dominant for millennia would collapse. In his private quarters later, Zintor accessed the classified xenobiological database. The file on humanity was surprisingly thin, unusual for a species with interstellar capability. As he dug deeper, he discovered something disturbing. Key observation periods were missing. Earth had been deliberately understudied. Why? He wondered. By the time the life signal had persisted for 3 full days, Zintor made his decision. Before the council, he publicly dismissed the readings as equipment malfunction, while privately authorizing an extraction team. This human specimen must be contained, he told Admiral Crovanx in a secure transmission. The Confederation's future depends on it. In the void, unaware of the political storm brewing, Elena Reyes floated in cryostasis, her cells undergoing a transformation that no human had ever experienced, or been allowed to experience, before. Elena stumbled to the pod's viewport, pressing her trembling hand against the transparent material. Outside, nothing but absolute darkness greeted her. No stars, no distant nebulae, just the perfect black of the galactic void. She should be dead. Instead, her veins glowed with subtle iridescence beneath her skin, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Med diagnostic, she croaked, her voice hoarse from weeks of disuse. The pod's AI responded with a damaged, stuttering voice. Physiological cal-cal anomalies detected. Cellular structure in flux. Unable to classify current state. Elena had been dying of late-stage cancer when she volunteered for the experimental jump ship mission. What did she have to lose? The illegal quantum cellular treatment had been her last hope, injecting programmable nanites designed to stabilize her deteriorating DNA by drawing energy from quantum fluctuations. The medical establishment had dismissed it as dangerous pseudoscience. Now, as she watched electricity arc between her fingertips and the pod's damaged console, she wondered if the treatment had done something far beyond its intended purpose. Location? She asked. Galactic void. Sector unknown. Standard nav navigation systems non-functional in current environment. Elena slumped against the wall. The void. Everyone knew what that meant. No rescue, no chance of survival. Yet here she was 3 weeks later, somehow still alive. When the pod lights flickered again, Elena instinctively reached toward the console. This time she felt something, a connection, as if the electricity running through the circuitry recognized her. The failing system stabilized momentarily as energy flowed from her fingertips. "What am I becoming?" she whispered to the darkness. On the Confederation stealth vessel Silent Observer, Dr. Cleveron watched the probe footage with growing astonishment. His species, the Valnar, had evolved in the radiation-soaked environment of binary neutron stars, making him the only qualified scientist expected to survive analyzing debris from the void. But there was no debris to analyze. Instead, his screen showed a functioning human escape pod with energy readings that defied explanation. "Magnify Sector 3 Alpha," he instructed the ship's AI. The image zoomed in on the pod's viewport, revealing a female human inside. She was conscious, moving, even manipulating the pod's systems. Most remarkable was the subtle luminescence visible beneath her skin, a pattern Cleveron recognized from ancient theoretical texts on quantum resonance. "Impossible," he whispered, his spine crests rising in scientific excitement. "She isn't just surviving the void. She's harmonizing with it." The quantum encrypted communication channel from Xylos Prime chimed. High Theorist Zintor's image appeared, his bioluminescent tendrils pulsing with agitation. "Report," Zintor demanded. "The human lives, High Theorist," Cleveron responded. "More than lives, she shows signs of adaptation. Her cellular structure appears to be generating a quantum shell similar to theoretical void shielding technology. Nothing in our xenobiological database suggests humans should be capable of this." Zintor's tendrils stilled, a sign of intense concentration. "Send complete biometric data immediately. Prepare retrieval protocols." After the transmission ended, Cleveron studied the footage again. Something troubled him about Zintor's reaction. The High Theorist hadn't seemed surprised enough by the biological impossibility unfolding before them. As Cleveron prepared the retrieval vessel, his tertiary sensory organ detected something unusual: energy signatures at the galaxy's edge. Running a covert scan, he identified silhouettes of ships with unfamiliar configurations, their sensors focused directly on the void. They weren't alone in their discovery. Meanwhile, within her pod, Elena gasped as her vision suddenly shifted. For a brief moment, she saw not the pod's interior, but a vast, impossible landscape of energy patterns and mathematical symmetries. The true face of the void, revealing itself to human eyes for the first time. Elena braced herself as the alien vessel's docking mechanism engaged with her pod. The massive living ship pulsed with colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. Blues that shifted between ultraviolet and infrared. Structures that seemed simultaneously solid and fluid. Her xenobiology training had covered dozens of theoretical alien architectures, but nothing like this biomechanical marvel that defied human engineering principles. She'd fashioned a crude electrical disruptor from pod components. Not much of a weapon, but better than facing the unknown defenseless. As the airlock mechanisms began cycling, Elena positioned herself strategically, heart pounding. "Quantum flux increasing to dangerous levels," reported the Confederation vessel's systems analyst, a serpentine Zithlar whose scales were already showing signs of radiation damage. "The human cellular emissions are destabilizing our biocircuits." Around the extraction chamber, 3 crew members collapsed, their neural systems overwhelmed by proximity to the pod. Their bodies convulsed as microscopic changes rippled through their cellular structures, spontaneous mutations triggered by exposure to the quantum field surrounding Elena's pod. Commander Cliveron adjusted his radiation-resistant exosuit. Maintain distance protocols, deploy telepathic dampers. As the only one still standing, he approached the airlock alone, his specialized physiology providing minimal protection against whatever the human was emitting. The inner doors parted, with a hiss of equalizing pressure revealing the human female, not cowering in fear as expected but standing in a combat stance, improvised weapon raised. More shocking was her appearance. Patches of her skin had become translucent with swirling patterns of energy visible beneath the surface. Before Cliveron could activate the translator matrix, the human spoke. "I am Dr. Elena Reyes of Earth," she announced in perfect galactic standard, each syllable precisely modulated for Valnar auditory physiology. "And you will explain yourselves before coming one step closer." Cliveron's tertiary heart skipped a beat. The translation systems weren't even active. Somehow she was communicating directly through thought patterns his species could understand. "How are you doing this?" he asked, mandibles clicking in agitation. "No human has neurological structures capable of—" "Your thoughts are visible," Elena interrupted, her expression confused yet determined. "Like electrical patterns floating around your head. I can see what you mean before you speak." The quantum fluctuations intensified around her as she spoke, causing the ship's lighting to flicker. Cliveron's scientific training battled with primal fear. The readings from his scanner were clear. Her DNA was simultaneously existing in thousands of quantum states, her consciousness somehow stabilizing the impossible configuration. "You're not just surviving the void," he whispered, scientific curiosity overcoming caution. "You're channeling it." As medical protocols commenced, Cliveron noticed the other scientists maintaining their distance. Only he seemed able to tolerate prolonged exposure to Elena's quantum field. During a moment when the others were distracted, he leaned closer to her examination table. "Your kind has been watched for centuries," he whispered. "The Confederation ranks all species by environmental adaptability. Humans were classified as unremarkable, but there were doubts, suspicions." Elena's eyes narrowed. "What suspicions?" "That your species adapts faster than any we've encountered. Some feared what would happen if humans were exposed to certain catalysts." He glanced meaningfully at her glowing veins. "This ship isn't a rescue mission, Elena Reyes. It's a containment protocol." As he spoke, Elena noticed his scales subtly shifting color, microscopic patterns forming that resembled her own cellular structure. Her adaptation was somehow communicating with his biology on a fundamental level. In the ship's engine room, far from the medical bay, engineers reported anomalies in the quantum drive. Critical systems began reconfiguring themselves component by component, as if the vessel itself was responding to an evolutionary imperative triggered by Elena's presence. The medical facility on Xylos Prime gleamed with an antiseptic perfection that immediately set Elena on edge. 2 assistants guided her through a labyrinth of corridors that subtly sloped downward, deeper into the facility, not toward the rehabilitation wings visible from the landing pad. Her enhanced perception caught the subtle clicks of security barriers activating behind them. "Your accommodations have been specially prepared for human physiology," explained Administrator Pelvox, a willowy being whose translucent skin revealed complex circulatory systems beneath. "We have extensive experience with carbon-based life forms." Elena nodded politely while cataloging inconsistencies. The staff's body language telegraphed military training, not medical care. The symbols on the walls indicated high-security containment protocols, and most tellingly, she could somehow perceive the neural dampers hidden in the ceiling panels. Technology designed to suppress psychic abilities she shouldn't possess. "How thoughtful," she replied. "And how long has the Confederation been studying humans?" Pelvox's circulatory system briefly flashed with stress markers. We maintain cordial observation of all provisional species. The examination room featured equipment that appeared medical, but contained subtle modifications. Elena recognized spectral analyzers disguised as health monitors and quantum containment fields, masquerading as healing chambers. High theorist Zintor arrived for her evaluation with an entourage of assistants. His 7 bioluminescent tendrils pulsed with complex patterns that Elena somehow understood as calculations, probability models of her potential threat level. We'll begin with a standard neural mapping, he announced, avoiding direct eye contact. Purely routine. As they attached sensors to her temples, Elena felt her quantum perception expanding. The facility's massive quantum computers became visible, to her mind, not physically but as data architectures calculating countless scenarios. Most disturbing were the simulations projecting her potential biological developments and associated threat assessments. During the neural scan, Elena's consciousness brushed against Zintor's thoughts. Images flooded her mind. A lush jungle world, inhabited by elegant crystalline beings, then the same planet reduced to ash by Confederation weaponry. The memory carried the emotional signature of justification, not remorse. Why did you erase the Veloc civilization from your historical records? Theorist? She asked suddenly. I can see the memory in your mind. Zintor froze, his tendrils stiffening in shock. The Veloc's extinction had been a classified genocide conducted centuries ago, when their telepathic abilities began evolving too rapidly. No, humans should have that information, and no being should be able to penetrate his species' natural electromagnetic thought shielding. Increase neural suppression by 40%, he ordered sharply, then composed himself. You're experiencing mild hallucinations, Dr. Reyes, common for humans adjusting to our atmosphere. That night, alone in her recovery room, actually a sophisticated containment cell, Elena discovered she could extend her quantum perception through the facility's systems. Security feeds became accessible through mere concentration. She learned her name had triggered alerts in multiple databases. Most chilling, surveillance had been placed on her daughter back on Earth immediately after Elena's disappearance. A slight movement at her door broke her concentration. Culveron slipped inside, his scales now definitely showing patterns that matched her quantum signature. They've scheduled extraction tomorrow, he whispered urgently. Your adaptive organs for military applications. Termination for the rest. As he spoke, both noticed their shadows on the wall behaving independently, forming intricate patterns resembling star maps of regions Elena had never seen, yet somehow recognized. Coordinates embedded in her changing DNA, pointing to something ancient waiting in the darkest regions between galaxies. The research wing's emergency containment alarms blared as Security Chief Vexnar sprinted through corridors now illuminated by pulsing red lights. He skidded to a halt before Laboratory 7, mandibles clicking in shock at the scene beyond the transparent barrier. Inside, what had been perfectly ordinary xylosan ferns now erupted through their containment vessels, tendrils of crystalline light extending toward the ceiling. The plant structures had transformed into mathematical lattices that shouldn't be possible in normal space-time. When did this begin? He demanded from the trembling researcher beside him. 20 minutes ago, she replied. Precisely when the human subject experienced rapid eye movement sleep in Containment Cell 12. The patterns match her quantum signature exactly. Security footage revealed the chaos spreading through multiple research wings simultaneously. Laboratory rodents phased through solid barriers, their tissue structures momentarily becoming translucent before resolidifying. Algae cultures in the hydroponics bay developed complex symmetrical patterns, visible only under quantum microscopy, patterns that rippled in perfect synchronization with Elena's brainwaves. Most concerning of all, the changes followed a mathematical progression identical to the quantum fluctuations emanating from Elena's cells. Her dreams were somehow rewriting reality. Young researcher Tivna worked late analyzing Elena's latest blood samples when she noticed something strange. Her hands had begun to tingle. Looking down, she gasped as her fingers became momentarily translucent energy patterns visible beneath her skin. Contamination protocol, she screamed, staggering toward the decontamination chamber. Medical personnel rushed her to isolation, where senior researchers debated immediate euthanasia, standard procedure for irreversible xenobiological contamination. Instead, High Theorist Zintor, appearing increasingly disheveled, ordered a radical test. Place her in void simulation. Chamber 3, he commanded. The chamber was designed to replicate void conditions for materials testing. No organic being had ever survived exposure for more than seconds. As Tivna was sealed inside, monitoring screens showed her vital signs spiking in panic, then stabilizing impossibly as the void simulation reached full intensity. When the chamber opened 3 minutes later, she emerged transformed, her eyes now containing swirling patterns of light and dark that defied conventional optics. "How do you feel?" asked the medical director. Tivna's voice came as a whisper, filled with wonder and terror. "I can hear them. Billions of voices in the void, waiting." The Galactic Council's emergency session descended into chaos as the implications became clear. Representatives from 17 species argued violently across the circular chamber, while quantum-encrypted data streamed to their respective homeworlds. "This contamination is spreading exponentially." Admiral Kervank slammed his armored fist against the podium, cracking its ancient stone. "The human corrupts everything she touches. We must sterilize the facility before it's too late." Behind the public debate, military contingency plans were already activating. Planetary defense systems recalibrating to target Xylos Prime itself if containment failed. Yet 3 representatives unexpectedly revealed their own scientists had detected similar quantum changes spreading across multiple worlds. Zintor, his appearance deteriorating as subtle quantum effects rippled through his own biology, stepped forward. His once immaculate robes hung disheveled, and his luminescent tendrils flickered erratically. "What if our fundamental assumptions are wrong?" he asked, voice quavering. "What if the void isn't empty at all? What if human biology is simply the first key to perceiving what's actually there?" As he spoke, his skin began manifesting the same quantum shell visible on Elena, patches of translucence revealing swirling energy patterns beneath. Several council members backed away in horror. Meanwhile, deep in the secure laboratory, Elena made a breakthrough. Focusing her consciousness, she successfully directed the quantum fields surrounding her cells, creating controlled patterns rather than chaotic emissions. With Cloveron monitoring, she carefully extended these patterns toward a dying research subject, a victim of radiation exposure whose cellular decay halted upon contact with her quantum shell. "It's not random," she whispered in amazement. "It can be controlled, directed, taught." As she worked, another vision overtook her, stronger than before. The void between galaxies wasn't empty, but teeming with intelligent quantum patterns that human senses weren't evolved to perceive. Most unsettling was the realization that human DNA contained specific sequences that functioned like receivers for these quantum signals, sequences too precise to have evolved naturally. Elena caught her reflection in a polished surface and froze. For a moment, another face superimposed over hers, ancient, patient, with eyes that contained galaxies. "Execution protocols initiated," announced the facility's AI in its emotionless tone. "All non-essential personnel evacuate Level 7 immediately." Elena ran alongside Cloveron through corridors that seemed to shift and reconfigure around them. Security barriers that should have blocked their path mysteriously malfunctioned, doors opening seconds before they reached them. Behind them, Tivna led 4 other partially adapted scientists and the increasingly unstable Zintor, whose tendrils now emitted erratic pulses of quantum energy. "The prototype vessel is in Hangar Delta," Cloveron said, checking a holographic map that flickered with interference patterns whenever Elena came too close to it. "It's equipped with experimental void shielding technology." Security drones swarmed the intersection ahead. As they raised their weapons, Elena felt a surge of panic and watched in astonishment as the drone's circuitry sparked and failed, the machines dropping harmlessly to the floor. "Did you do that?" Tivna asked, her galaxy-filled eyes wide. Elena stared at her hands. I think so. It's like the ship's systems recognize me somehow." The facility's quantum infrastructure seemed to respond to her emotional state, rearranging connections and pathways in advance of their movements. Lighting systems brightened along their chosen route while darkening alternate corridors used by security forces. "She's the trigger," muttered Zintor, his once methodical scientific mind fragmented by partial adaptation. Human DNA was engineered to be the catalyst. The ancient texts spoke of void speakers, biological keys to activate dormant protocols. As they raced toward the hangar, Elena's consciousness briefly expanded beyond the facility. A powerful vision engulfed her. Coordinates to a location deep in the void where others like her awaited. The image burned itself into her awareness with absolute clarity. Admiral Cravank stood on the command deck of the warship Inevitable Justice, the Confederation's most advanced military vessel. Tactical displays showed the facility breach in progress. "This is no longer about one human," he announced to his assembled fleet commanders. "This threatens the very foundation of our cosmic order. All adapted subjects must be neutralized, regardless of species." His senior officers nodded grimly. They had all seen the classified footage of Tivna's transformation, a xylosan, one of their own, corrupted by human influence. If such adaptation could spread across species barriers, no biological hierarchy could survive. The prototype research vessel burst from Hangar Delta, its experimental drives flaring with quantum energy patterns that matched Elena's signature. The ship moved erratically, performing maneuvers that defied conventional physics. "All vessels target engines only," Cravanks ordered. "We need the human specimen intact." Inside the fleeing ship, chaos reigned as systems malfunctioned unpredictably. Their pilot, a Valnar scientist named Hevtal, fought with controls that responded seemingly at random. "The navigation system won't accept standard coordinates," he shouted over blaring alerts. Elena pushed her way to the console. "Let me try." As her fingers touched the interface, the ship's quantum drive resonated with her cellular frequency. The navigation system suddenly accepted the void coordinates from her vision. "What are you doing?" Cliveron asked, watching the ship's trajectory shift toward the most dangerous region of space. "Trust me," Elena replied, her eyes reflecting starlight patterns that didn't match the visible cosmos. The pursuing Confederation fleet opened fire. Energy beams converged on their ship as Hevtal executed a desperate maneuver through a dense asteroid field. The vessel shuddered violently as multiple impacts breached the hull. Warning lights flooded the cabin red. "Hull integrity compromised in sections 3 through 7, announced the ship's AI. "Atmosphere venting, emergency protocols failing." Cliveron and the other alien crew members began gasping, their respirator systems failing as cabin pressure plummeted. Elena alone remained unaffected, the void adaptation protecting her from the vacuum. Time seemed to slow as she looked at her dying companions. The quantum shell around her cells pulsed visibly now, responding to her desperate wish to save them. With newfound determination, Elena concentrated, consciously manipulating her quantum field for the first time. "Take my hand," she told Cliveron, extending her glowing fingers toward him. "Trust me, breathe." The tail spread like quantum entanglement itself, impossible to contain once initiated. In shadowed corners of bustling spaceports across the galaxy's rim, beings of all species whispered about the human who rewrote biological laws. She extended her protection to beings who would have executed her, murmured a Zithlar traitor to his enraptured audience in a dingy cantina on Proxima Station. Admiral Cravanks himself witnessed it through ship sensors. 7 different species, all shielded by a single human's quantum field. Grainy footage circulated through underground networks, Elena floating in vacuum, her body luminous with energy as she enveloped her alien companions in her protective shell. For species categorized as biologically inferior by Confederation hierarchies, the implications were revolutionary. The abandoned space station that Elena's coordinates led them to defied conventional architecture, suspended at the very edge of a tear in spacetime. Its impossible geometries suggested creators who perceived dimensions beyond standard space. "The Nexus," whispered Zintor, recognition flickering in his fractured consciousness. "I've seen this in ancient texts believed to be mere allegory, As they approached, the station's dormant systems activated, responding to Elena's quantum signature. Docking mechanisms reconfigured to accommodate their damaged vessel, and internal atmospheres adjusted to support their diverse biological needs without input. "This place was waiting for us," Tivna said, her galaxy eyes widening. "For you." The station's materials resonated with void energies, amplifying Elena's abilities exponentially. Within days, the first pilgrims arrived, scientists and refugees from 17 species, bringing persecuted members of their kind seeking adaptation. Elena established a laboratory in the station's central chamber, where she refined the adaptation process through careful experimentation. Success rates improved steadily: 42% survival in the first trials, 67% in the second generation, 88% by the third month. Kelvarin, now her closest collaborator, made a breakthrough while mapping adapted subjects' DNA. The quantum receptors weren't randomly evolved, he explained, displaying complex genetic models. They were engineered into all sentient life, but humanity's receptors were significantly enhanced. "You're saying we were designed as activation keys for whatever exists in the void?" Elena asked. "Precisely. Your species wasn't accidentally compatible. You were specifically modified to interact with quantum realities." As if confirming this theory, Elena began receiving telepathic communications from entities within the void itself, ancient consciousnesses that existed as pure quantum potential. Her dreams filled with conversations in mathematical languages that somehow made perfect sense to her transformed mind. "They've been watching physical life evolve for billions of years," she explained to the growing community of adapted beings, "waiting for species capable of perceiving them. The void isn't empty. It contains a parallel evolutionary track of life that developed without conventional matter." The Confederation's violent fracturing came swifter than anyone anticipated. The Reform Coalition embraced adaptation as the future of spacefaring life, while the Purity Alliance condemned it as cosmic corruption that would destroy established order. When Purity forces attacked an adaptation center on Mira 4, killing hundreds of refugees awaiting treatment, Admiral Cravanks made his decision. The decorated military commander, who had once led the hunt for Elena, transmitted a system-wide message. "I have witnessed evolutionary compassion firsthand. I can no longer enforce biological hierarchies based on false limitations." He defected, with half the Confederation fleet, arriving at the Nexus to offer protection to the Voidwalkers. As civil war erupted across 17 systems, Elena made her most disturbing discovery yet. Earth's quarantine wasn't imposed to protect the galaxy from humanity as she'd been told. Ancient Confederation records, decoded with help from the partially adapted Zintor, revealed the truth. Humans had been isolated because something feared they might fulfill their designed purpose, becoming the bridge between matter-based life and the quantum intelligences that had always shared our universe unseen. Who engineered us? Elena wondered, staring into the swirling quantum patterns of the void visible from the station's observation deck. And what were we designed to become? 5 years to the day since her impossible survival in the galactic void, Elena Reyes stood at the podium of the newly formed Cosmic Congress. The chamber itself was a testament to transformation, a hybrid structure where matter and quantum energy intertwined, creating spaces simultaneously solid and fluid. Thousands of representatives from over 300 species filled the physical chamber, while the subtle shimmer in the air indicated the presence of countless void native observers participating from their dimensional plane. Elena's form shifted subtly as she spoke, her consciousness bridging both realities simultaneously. Gone was the terrified xenobiologist who had ejected herself into certain death. In her place stood a being who embodied the convergence of two evolutionary paths once thought irreconcilable. When my escape pod entered the void 5 years ago, I believed I faced extinction, she began, her voice resonating in both conventional sound waves and quantum frequencies. Instead, I discovered we had been living with a profound misconception, not just about the universe, but about ourselves. Behind her stood living testament to this revelation, Admiral Cravanks, whose partial quantum adaptation now allowed him to perceive the void natives, Kulvaran, whose scientific brilliance had created safer adaptation protocols for non-human physiologies, and Zintor, fully transformed and revealed as a hybrid planted millennia ago by the Void natives as an observer among matter-based life. Most significant was the presence of Elena's daughter Sarah, brought from Earth after humans worldwide began, spontaneously manifesting adaptive symptoms, proof that Elena's transformation had quantum entangled with her homeworld across impossible distances. The war ended not through military victory, Elena continued, but through understanding. When 1,000,000 adapted beings ventured into the void together, we returned with irrefutable evidence of what had always existed alongside us. An entire civilization evolved along a different path, watching and waiting for the moment we could finally see them. The Congress chamber's central floor irised open, revealing the first functioning void gate, a revolutionary transportation system utilizing quantum dimensions to enable instant travel between any points in space. The assembled representatives gasped as real-time images appeared from across the galaxy. 1,000 such gates activating simultaneously on worlds once months or years apart, now connected instantaneously. More profound were the environmental transformations displayed on massive screens. Planets once devastated by industrial exploitation showed dramatic healing as quantum technologies replaced destructive practices. The energy patterns of void natives interacted with damaged ecosystems, accelerating restoration that would have taken centuries through conventional means. The greatest error in our cosmic understanding, Elena explained, her eyes reflecting patterns of galaxies, wasn't believing the void was empty. It was believing we were separate from it. She revealed the stunning truth learned from the void. Natives. The universe cycles between matter-dominant and quantum-dominant phases every billion years. The current cycle approached transition, and without adaptation, all conventional life would have perished in the coming quantum shift. After the ceremony, Elena stood with Sarah at an observation window overlooking Earth. Their homeworld glowed, with the subtle iridescence of global adaptation taking hold. "People are afraid of change," Sarah said, watching the transformation of their planet. "Were you scared when it first happened to you?" Elena squeezed her daughter's hand, both of their fingers momentarily becoming translucent, quantum patterns intertwining. Terrified, but that's the paradox of existence. Sometimes what seems like death is actually evolution. She gazed at the stars, now visible to her in both their physical and quantum aspects simultaneously. "We didn't just survive the void," she told Sarah softly. "We were always part of it. We just forgot how to see it." In the observatory's reflection, Elena glimpsed her quantum form, resembling neither human nor alien, but a bridge between worlds that had always been destined to reunite. The void between possibilities had finally been crossed.